Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6, season 2 of Career Girl Chats. My name is Anna O, and I am the founder of Career Girl Lifestyle. On today's episode, we will be talking with Danielle Holmes, who is the founder of Career Services by Elle, and she is going to be giving us all of her tips and gems on switching careers. Before I invite Danielle into the chat, I wanted to read her bio. If you are not already subscribed to Career Girl Lifestyle on YouTube, please be sure to do so because all of our Career Girl Chats episodes are on YouTube and they're good. So let me read Danielle's bio. Danielle Holmes is an award-winning resume writer with over 10 years of experience creating targeted career documents for clients from all industries and backgrounds. With her proven resume strategies and techniques, she has helped clients reach their career goals and achieve high levels of personal success. Her company, Career Services by Elle, has a solid background and history of eliminating barriers that often prevent job seekers from obtaining the job of their dreams. And today, she is going to be sharing her gems on breaking into a new industry. So let me invite Danielle in so we can get this discussion started. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for Career Girl Chats. I'm really excited to have you.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
I was telling you earlier today in our little private one-on-one, but I'll say it here on live. Like, Danielle is the queen of reels when it comes to this, like, career consulting industry. Like, I don't see anyone doing the reels like you. I really enjoy them. They're so fun to watch, but they're also very informative and very necessary. So I'm really excited to just have this discussion with you because it is very necessary. A lot of women have questions on the things that we're going to be touching on today. So I'm just happy to really share this information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to be able to share the information because I think a lot of it is stuff that people don't know. So, I want to be able to provide that information and, they can definitely benefit from this conversation we're having tonight.
Yes. I haven't said this in any of my other chats, which I should, but I really encourage you ladies to take notes because these lives, although, we try to make them fun and, vibrant, it's definitely a learning tool. So I really want to make sure that everyone is just ending tonight with some takeaways. So definitely take those notes.
Absolutely.
All right. So before we get into the questions for everyone else, let's learn a little bit about you. So talk to us about Career Services by Elle. How did you get into resume writing and helping professionals to land their dream jobs?
It all started, about 15 years ago. I was like the go-to person that would write resumes for everyone, family members, friends, people that I was, living with in dorms and colleges. So, being that person that was constantly asked to do that task kind of opened my eyes and made me realize, oh, wow, I can actually make a living doing this. So, once I graduated from college, I then started my career as a teacher. And if y'all know anything about teachers, we don't really make too much money, especially when we start out. So writing resumes was it was a way for me to make additional money on the side. So I worked for a couple of companies, and then after a while, I said, you know what, I want to do this on my own because I wanted to be able to connect with clients and to be able to build those relationships and truly help people reach their goals. So that's where it came from, and I think of it as like, my love of being able to help people of all ages because I work in a classroom and I'm helping young people reach their goals and I'm helping adults reach their goals as well. So that's like my ultimate mission in life is to help people reach their goals.
I love that connection. And shout out to all the women in education. I work in education as well.
Love it.
So a part of your mission is helping career changers to become unstuck, right? I definitely saw that word stuck a lot on, your page, and you speak a lot about helping people to become unstuck. So what are reasons why most career changers feel stuck, and how exactly do you help them with your services?
Most people feel stuck because it's different reasons. Like some people, it's because they've been at a job so long, they know the ins and out of the company, they have that job security, and, they might have that seniority where they don't feel like if anything happens in a company that they'll lose their job. For other people, it's the income. They know that that job provides steady income. They know that if they enter a new career, they're the low man on the totem pole or low woman on the totem pole. And it doesn't provide them, again, with that security. I think a lot of it surrounds security.
Yes.
When I've had these conversations with people, whether it's clients I've worked for, or just even people in my comments, it's like that constant recurring theme of like job security, not being able to make the money that they want to make, or feeling like they don't have the skills or experience to get far with change when it comes to changing careers.
Right. And so what exactly do you do with your clients to, one, help them break out of that fear, and two, help them to land those dream positions with those companies that they would like to work for?
Well, one of the ways to help them break out of that fear is because they're not understanding that they actually many times have what's called transferable skills that they can bring into that new role. So, it's really helping them understand what skills they currently have that they can transfer into that new role, and what experience they have that can easily be transferred into the new role. So they don't feel like they're just completely starting from scratch.
Right.
Also, I have had consultations with clients where sometimes in the middle of it, it's like a motivational talk. Like it's me talking to them and just saying, hey, you got this. Like you can do this, and like really helping them recognize the experience that they have and how they can apply that in the new career that they're looking to go after. So a lot of it is like they're kind of stuck in their head. Imposter syndrome is completely taking over, and it's just reassuring them that they can do this and they can be successful and they will be happy in the long run.
Yeah, I love that. It's all about mindset.
Absolutely.
Because we talk ourselves out of a lot of the things that we should be doing. And I'm definitely going to ask about that later on in the discussion. So let's get into it. What are signs that it's time to switch careers or change your job?
Oh,
like, when do you know, like, I got to go, honey?
Yes, I just talked about this today on my post. So it's like a couple, there are lots of signs, but the main signs, the main things that you'll see when you know it's time for you to leave a job is you're dreading going to work. So, you're laying in bed and just, finding excuses to call out, like thinking about how much you just dread going into that environment. And it's not just like the company, like it's really like the work that you're doing. You just don't want to go to work to do that work. Another thing can be feeling burned out. So if you're just, completely washed out and feeling like stressed, if it's associated with the work that you're doing, it can be a big sign that it's time for you to change careers. Another one can be just don't feel passionate about the job that you're doing or the work that you're doing, or you don't feel challenged in that role. A lot of the times those are signs that it's time for you to change careers. And I always try to differentiate between like a career change and a job change, because not every single situation means that you have to change careers. It might just, like if it's just like simply you don't like your boss, or you don't like your coworkers, or you don't like the company's ethics or something like that, then that can just be a job change. You could probably just go from one company to the next doing the same work. But if it's like you don't really like the work that you're doing, you don't feel challenged, you feel burned out, you're not passionate about it, then that a lot of the times is going to warrant you to, you'll need to change careers to achieve the level of happiness that you desire to achieve.
Right. So that means you have to ask yourself reflective questions. Like, is it just the culture that I don't not like, or is it the actual task that I'm doing, the role that I'm in? Am I not pleased with that?
Exactly.
So that brings me to my next question. Before someone decides that they want to transition into a new career, what are some questions that they need to ask themselves before making that major change?
Some questions that you want to ask yourself: do I have the skills that I need? Because sometimes, yes, you might have the transferable skills, but you might need a little bit more to fill in that skills gap. So you might have to volunteer, you might have to get some certifications, you might have to maybe enroll in like a community college program to, fill in that skills gap. Other questions that you want to ask yourself is, is this something that, I'm just thinking of on the fly? Like if it's something that just popped in your head overnight and you haven't really given it much thought, you might want to just kind of sit on those feelings for a while. Most of the time when people are talking about changing careers, it's something that they've been thinking about for months, some people for years. They're just like constantly thinking about it and it's consuming them. So that's something you want to ask yourself. Have you had enough time thinking about this? Also, do you have a solid plan in place? Changing careers is not something, like I can't lie to you and say that it's easy to change careers. But the rewards are worth the work that you have to put in to do it. So sometimes you just really need to think to yourself, am I really prepared to do this? Do I have all my ducks in a row before you just jump in to a pool where you don't even know how deep the water is? So, make sure that you've done all your research. Make sure that you know everything that you need to know before you do it. And last but not least, have you really started to build and leverage your network? That's going to be very important as well, because your network, you want to be able to rely on them as you transition into this new career.
Right. Is there anything that you should be doing beforehand, like before you make that switch? Just to decide if a career change is really what you want. Like, are there any conversations that you can have in the workplace with your superiors or your peers that can kind of help you decide if that is something you really would like to do?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. So for some people, they're switching careers because there's no more room for advancement in their company. So they, if you're having if you go and you have a conversation with a superior and, they're like, hey, it is what it is.
Right.
We don't really have any management positions open. We don't really have room for you to grow. There's no room for you to advance. Or they're giving you like a timeline that is just not aligned with your personal goals in life and your professional goals in life. Then, that's something that you want to keep in mind as like a part of that conversation that can spark your desire to change careers. Other conversations you might have are with coworkers, just kind of like, they're the ones that can help you think of those skills that you can transfer into a new career. So, like, hey, what am I good at? What are my talents? What are my strengths? Having those conversations a lot of the times helps you realize things that you don't see within yourself. That's something that I hear from a lot of people that come to me for resume services. They say, I do my job, but I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I'm great at. And a lot of times having a coworker or somebody that you're working with in that environment point that out, or looking at your performance reviews, things like that, that's going to help you understand what your strengths are that you can transfer into that new role.
Right. And how do you, like, generally, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but since we're on the topic of transferable skills, how do you localize that in interviews? Because it's one thing to have it on your resume, but how do you speak to that in interviews, especially if you're entering into a new industry that you have no experience in?
When those conversations or those questions come up where they're talking about things that you're not, like you don't have the direct skills in it, that's when you want to bring up those transferable skills. So if they're saying like, we need you to be able to manage a project, and maybe you've never managed a project before, but you've worked with a team on a project, and you're actually bringing into this experience role, the experience of being a manager or a leader in a company, kind of like combining those skills together and saying, hey, I can transfer this into this new role. Like really looking at deeply at each skill that you have. I always say, and even when I work with clients, a lot of times they're like, this resume is not just what is on paper for me, but it's something that I can kind of like look at and say, hey, I really am prepared to go into this job interview and answer these questions, because I have here in this paper what makes me stand out, what makes me prepared to take on this type of job. It's kind of like the prep work for them for the interview. So I would say, like, reviewing that document and really looking at the skills section and looking at your experience is really going to help you excel in an interview and be more confident when you're answering those questions that, can be a little nerve-wracking because you don't have all the experience that they would essentially be looking for somebody who's worked in that type of role before.
Right. So one of the common things I've heard, especially in HR, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, is, well, I don't really know what to do, right? Because if you don't know what you're good at, you don't know what roles to apply to. I don't know who would hire me, or I don't know what direction to go in. So for those people who are unhappy in their current roles and they want to leave, but they feel like they don't have any direction, what advice do you have for them?
In that case, I always, always, always suggest taking a career assessment. So, for example, ONET, they have a career assessment that you can take, and it really looks at your skills and your strengths, and it gives you a couple of ideas of different jobs that you can, that would align with those skills and strengths. I definitely,
Right.
suggest taking the time as part of that prep work and getting prepared to transition careers, really identifying exactly what you want to do. Because you're not going to get far in that job search if you have no clue on what you want to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Are there any good assessments for transferable skills?
I'm not too sure. I'm almost sure that if you use the ONET, because that is focusing on skills and focusing on interests and things like that. If you use that, you can do it. But a lot of times when you're looking for transferable skills, you should be looking at the job description. So when you look at the job description, you'll be looking at it with the mind frame of, what do I currently have that I can bring into this role? So if they're looking for somebody who, let's say you're going from being in social work to being a teacher. Okay, you have experience working with people, communicating with people, meeting deadlines, and working with teams or, interdisciplinary teams. That's a great assessment as well. The Myers-Briggs has a free assessment as well. So those are two main ones that I suggest is, using those assessments to really identify what type of job is going to be the best fit for you before you just kind of dive into a monster.com search with no idea of what type of roles to look for.
Right. And then you just end up right back in the same situation. So once you do know what you want, right, you get decisive, you're like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. How do you develop an action plan to get there? What are some of the things that the steps that you want to take?
So the first step, like we mentioned, is really, taking that assessment and figuring out exactly what type of role you're going to be applying for. Next, you want to look at your transferable skills. You want to really take an inventory of those skills and get those all prepared and ready. You want to reach out to your network and say, hey, currently I'm looking to change careers. If you have any connections, please feel free to send them my way. You also want to build your network because you should be connecting with people that are in that new industry and that are currently in that role. And I even suggest sometimes it takes a little bit of extra work, but if you can find people that took the same career path as you, talk to them, link up with them, ask them questions, because a lot of times they're more than happy to share that with you and to be able to kind of, instead of reinventing the wheel, you'll be able to do it and, make that transfer or change jobs in a much easier way. But, networking is very important. You want to also make sure that you get a new resume, because that's something that you'll need. You can't use your old resume when you're changing careers, because the keywords that are in that document and all the words that are in there are targeting your old role. So you want something targeting your new role and focusing on those transferable skills and experience. So essentially those are like the main parts of getting prepared for that career change. And then, there are also the things you have to do, like the not so fun things, but, being financially prepared. So if you are going to be taking on a role where temporarily you might be making less money than you were making, being ready for that. If it's something where you might not have all the skills, you might have to enroll in some classes. So I tell people it's not something that, a career change is not something that happens overnight. It's not something that you could just wake up and be like, oh, today I'm going to change careers, and by the end of March, I will be in a new career. It's not something like that. It's more of, you have to do the preparation. You have to figure out your timeline. But what I always say as a part of that plan is figure out in your head everything you got to do, kind of just get all the thoughts and ideas swirling around, and then write down a date somewhere in permanent marker. I don't care where you put it. If you want to get it tattooed on you, you can do that. And make that the date that you leave your job to go into your new career, because you have to have that goal to go after. And I think that's so important. And a lot of times that'll even just motivate you to keep going because you know, hey, I committed to this. Tell your network, tell everybody on social media, go live and be like, listen, y'all, next year, this time, I'm going to be in my new career. Because they will hold you accountable for that.
That's true. You got to put it out there. Do you often talk about sacrifice with your clients? Because I think sometimes, you know, when we think about our goals, we're always thinking, and as we should, like we always think about, you know, the positive things, you know, the wins, but sometimes we don't think about the sacrifice, you know, like maybe you may have to take a pay cut, you know, for a temporary a period of time, or maybe you may have to have a title change that isn't as glamorous, you know, as you would like it to be. Like, can you get into some of the realities that do come with a career change?
Like I mentioned before, sacrifice is going to be, hey, you might not make as much money as you're making now, and it might be temporary, you know, knowing that you have to be prepared for that, and you might have to save up so that you can have that cushion until you reach your salary goals. I think is very important. Also, knowing that it's not going to happen overnight and really mentally preparing yourself to go through the journey is important. You can't just think that you're going to wake up and be in a new career tomorrow.
Right.
The other part of the sacrifice is leaving your comfort zone. You're like, you know your job, you know the ins and outs of your job, you know what you're doing every single day.
Right.
In a new place, new people, you know, a new boss to impress, and you have to be ready to make that sacrifice. Sometimes humbling yourself and saying, you know what, I'm not going to be 100% perfect. I'm going to mess up. I'm not going to come into this role knowing every single thing, but I'm going to learn, and one day I'm going to be the best at this job. So I think that sometimes it takes a huge shift mentally to get prepared to do something like that.
What strategies should career changers be using in their approach?
Creating a plan, I think that's part of your strategy. As I mentioned, like some of these things might be a little bit repetitive, but it is really important to kind of focus on these things. But creating a plan should be part of your strategy. Creating your exit plan as well should be part of your strategy, because you don't want to burn any bridges. You don't want to get so excited to get into your new role that you just one day call up your job and say, I quit. Like, you want to make sure that you do it the correct way. That should be a part of your strategy. Networking should be a part of your strategy, and making sure that you have everything taken care of. You have a solid resume, cover letter. You're on LinkedIn, because a lot of companies are using that to research candidates and also to find people as well. So I think making sure that you cover all your bases is going to make sure that that career change goes through very smoothly. You know, implementing those strategies will make sure of that.
Yeah. So I see a lot of career coaches and resume writers on the chat, and I know they'll probably hate me for this question, but I have to ask it. But the women who don't necessarily want to invest, right, in professional services, they maybe want to work on their resumes themselves. What are some changes that they should be making in their resumes if they're not going to hire somebody else to do it?
Yeah, and I want to like put that out there too. You don't have to have a resume writer to write a resume. It's just like taxes. You don't have to have an accountant to have your taxes prepared. You can go on H&R Block, I think it's called, and do them yourself. But sometimes, you know, they prefer to have somebody do the job for them. They might not be great at writing, or, you know, they just don't have the time. So if you're deciding to do it yourself, I definitely first suggest that you have what's called an ATS compatible resume template. That means, ATS means applicant tracking system, and that just means that your template does not have any type of formatting that will not get past that system that they use to filter candidates who are applying to jobs online. The second thing that you want to do, you want to have a solid document created. That means that you have your job title at the top. A lot of times people get confused when I say job title at the top. The resume, they'll be like, well, I'm not this yet, so why is this at the top of my resume? Well, you want to make sure that the job title's up there, because that's actually targeting the role you're applying for. You're letting them know right away, this is the job that I'm applying for. This is what I'm focusing on in this resume. Under that, you want to have a strong summary. That's very important as well. A lot of times that's where you bring in some of those transferable skills and experience. And, you know, a lot of times I put in my documents like what's called a key skills section because I like to front load the document with those keywords that will help them get past the applicant tracking system. And, you know, a very strong professional experience section that's very important. That's going to include those achievement-based statements that really show what you achieved in your role, not really focusing too much on what you did. Because a lot of times people get kind of focused on, okay, I managed a team, I completed projects, I handled operations, but they're not saying what those tasks led to. How did it help them to save money? How did it help them, improve their processes? Things like that. That's what you want to focus on because the goal is to make sure that your resume stands out, which is very important for career changers. And always go to the job description. Your resume should be aligned to that job description. It should include the keywords that you see in the job description. I always say narrow in on the qualification section of the job description. A lot of the times that part of the job description has the keywords that you need that you can put into your resume.
Right. But don't just straight up copy it though, because they will notice that as well.
Do not do that. Oh my God. You will not believe how many times I've seen people do that. And I'm like, it's
what about because I've heard mixed things when it comes to the objective, summary at the top. I've heard some resume writers say don't put it in there. I've heard others say, do put it in there. So what is your advice?
No, please don't.
No objective. Okay.
Please no objective statements in the resume. Objective statements are like that fashion that it went out of style. So we used to use objective statements before, and that was just like your way of saying right away what your purpose of writing this resume was for, what job you're applying for, and you could use that resume for everything as long as you change the objective statement. Now it's all about the career summary, and the career summary could be, I don't want to say summary because sometimes you could use bullet points. It doesn't always have to be like a paragraph. Brand statements, I do like a value-driven statement sometimes, depending on the level of where the person is in their career, but I don't do it as a, either or. Like it will be in addition to a summary, because that's just my style. I always say, like, I think every writer has their own style, but my style is the summary because my goal is to capture their attention right away. I want to get the recruiter or the hiring manager's attention right away.
Right. And what about cover letters? Because we're always talking about resumes, but we don't often touch on cover letters because they're important too. Any advice for cover letters and how to structure those?
Yes. Cover letters are very important. That should be one of the essential documents that you have on hand. A lot of people think that because they hear hiring managers and recruiters don't really read cover letters that you don't need them, but you should always have it. If there is a place on the, when you're applying for the job and it allows you to attach a cover letter, always attach a cover letter, even if they say it's optional, because you have essentially gone above and beyond to get that role by taking that extra step that some people are not going to take. Yes. And then when it comes to cover letter, again, just kind of reaffirming or restating some of those transferable skills and experience that you have, mentioning maybe in a sentence why you're looking to transfer careers or why you're looking to change careers. You want to make sure you're doing that in there as well. But one thing that I like to do when it comes to cover letters, because I think in the mind frame of a hiring manager or recruiter, and I know that they don't have, a lot of times in some of these companies, they don't have a lot of time to sit down and read every single cover letter.
Right.
For the hiring manager or recruiter that is like a quick reader, they don't want to spend a lot of time, I put 3 bullet points in there to help them see right away the value that you can bring. And that's after like the 1 or 2 paragraphs that I write in the document. So that's just, again, it's a strategy that I use.
Yeah.
Not saying that if you don't do it, you won't get a job. It's just, every writer has their own little thing that they do.
You mentioned networking, right, as one of the strategies. Let's talk about LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
How do you approach recruiters, in a career space that you are not in, that you are not familiar with, but that you would like to someday be where they are at?
So you want to use, they have like a feature in mail on there where if you're not already connected with them, you can send them a message. Make it very short. You know, a lot of times you want to start with showing a way that you're both connected. So whether it's maybe, you notice that they love the same sports team that you like, finding a way of like starting off the conversation rather than, hey, y'all hiring?
Right.
You want to like find a way to build that connection and then just kind of say, hey, I'm looking to change careers within the next month or so. Just inquiring about any open positions at your company, things like that. That's something that you can mention, or you could actually mention a position that you found to them. But I always, like I said, suggest starting out in a way that's a lot more conversational to start that conversation, so it's not just somebody else coming into their inbox asking about a position. I'm not saying that if you do it that way that they won't reach out to you or they won't respond to you, but I definitely think it's, it helps you stand out a little bit better if you have a strategy that you use that it shows that you actually went to their profile, that you learned something about them, instead of just, sliding in their email and asking them about jobs.
Right.
I would suggest, when it comes to LinkedIn too, if you apply for a job, following up with the hiring manager or following up with the recruiter and just kind of like letting them know, hey, I just applied for this open position. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear from you, something like that. So that way you're going the extra step to make that connection with them on LinkedIn.
Right, right. What is your advice for women who feel like they've invested so much time into school or into a career, but they're scared to make that career change?
It's not easy, I have to say, because you're right. A lot of times it's so much money that goes into taking on a new job or taking on, the job that you have. You think about how much money you've invested into advancing in your career, and also just the amount of time. Time itself is also an investment.
Right.
So when it comes down to that, I say what matters more. I've heard of situations and stories where people have stayed in a career for 10, 15, 20 years. They got to the point where they just tried to just deal with it, got sick, and ended up passing away. And like, I don't want to like say
Oh, wow.
story,
Yeah.
but that's
It
the
happens.
reality. It's like if you're in a job and you're stressed, it's affecting your health, you're not happy, don't continue to put up with that. No amount of money is ever going to be enough to say that you could sacrifice your health for. I'm sorry.
Right.
I definitely think it's more important to put you first. Understand that the money that you spent, I believe that everything happens for a reason, and that money is going to come back to you somehow, some way.
Absolutely.
And the happiness itself is just going to overpower you to the point where I'm sure, hopefully you'll be able to come to grips or come to terms with that.
Yes, your peace of mind is way more important than a piece of paper, like 100%. And most of the time, I feel like, because I've been there before. I'm sure a lot of the women on here have been there before too. It's like, if you don't love the job, then your work ethic is just, like you'll get the job done, but because you're not in love with it, you're not giving it your best. You're not thriving in that role. You're not, showing up and showing out like you can. So why put yourself through that? Can you tell us about a success story that you've had with any of your clients, for the ladies on here who are not familiar with your services?
I get success stories all the time. So one of the latest ones, I believe I might have shared it on here or on LinkedIn, I'm not sure. A client I was working with at the end of last year, she was going after a project management role. And when I tell you she had like zero experience, like we were like, I was diving deep to get those transferable skills and experience into her resume. And I got an email from her last month and she said that she got hired. She's working for a Fortune 500 company. The name of the company is not coming to my mind right now, but it was such an exciting moment because it was like all the work that she, that I put into the resume, the work of her applying for those jobs and networking, it finally paid off. I think that's, those success stories are like the best things because it feels like this has all amounted to something that, their happiness, their ability to feel like they have achieved something, they've gone after their goal, like it's also a goal for me. It's like I want to see
Right.
them win. Sometimes I feel like sometimes more than they want to win. Like it's just an amazing feeling when they are able to land those jobs.
I love it. And you talk a lot about it being a journey, right? It's not something that happens overnight. So how long is a career change typically? From you coming up with that action plan, networking, doing all of the strategies in between, how long does that generally take?
I would say it varies. So there are some people that have that do what's called like a career pivot. So that's just, maybe going from being in one industry to another industry, but staying in the same role. So if they're an operations manager in retail, now they want to be an operations manager in the telecommunications industry, then, it's not as big as a transfer because it's like literally you have the skills, you have the experience managing operations. It's just now learning a new industry, learning how to apply those skills in a new industry. That does not take a lot of time. A lot of people, they can just literally normally do a regular, like almost as much time as you would spend applying for a regular job. Those types of career pivots would take. When it comes down to like completely changing your career, so if you were a store manager for Nike and now you say you want to be a teacher, well, now you have to get your bachelor's degree if you don't already have it. If you do have it, then you're going to have to get your certification. You're going to have to student teach. There are some programs. I mean, sometimes they're in an industry, like I say education a lot because that's my industry. But like, for example, in my industry, they have different programs where if you are changing careers, you can get into the classroom almost right away. And then you're just taking your classes while you're teaching. And you have like different people that come in and support you and help you out throughout that process.
Right. So one thing that we didn't touch on was research. You have to research your industry.
Yes.
I think that's also, a part of a good strategy too. For women who are interested in your services, how do they get in contact with you?
They can email me at elle@ellecareerservices.net, or they can visit my website, www.ellecareerservices.net. If you want to go on there, I have all my packages and services listed on there. If you have questions, I have a little cute check box in the corner. I'm always on there. You could always type me a message and talk to me that way. There's also a way for you to book a consultation if you have any specific questions that you want me to answer. So I definitely think, either email or website is the best way to start if you want to connect with me.
Yeah. And I know we couldn't touch on, every single thing that this topic encompasses, but if you can just give me like 3 takeaways that you would like everyone to end this live with, what are they when it comes to switching careers or strategies for switching careers?
So my first one that I would give is come up with a solid plan. That's very important. We went over that a lot, talking about creating that plan. Number 2, network. Really rely on your network. I think they say, if I'm not mistaken with this number, 85% of jobs are obtained or acquired through networking. So that just goes to show you that networking is super important, even more when you're changing careers. And number 3, make sure that you have a solid resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile, because you want to impress the hiring manager or recruiter that is, in that industry. You want to be able to catch their attention, because again, you're coming into this without the skills and experience that people that are already in the industry have, and you want to stand out. So having those solid documents in place will help.
I have a bag here of some mystery questions. These are questions that were not on our list that we went over. It's just for me to get to know you better, for the audience to get to know you better. They're not crazy, I promise. Okay. I'm going to choose 3 questions at random. And I always choose the same one. So I'm hoping that for you, I get different questions. Let's see. Give us one self-care tip of yours.
One self-care tip? I would say Netflix. Netflix. That is like the biggest self-care, especially right now during the pandemic. Like for me, I love to binge watch shows on Netflix. It just, takes my mind off of everything that I have to, deal with every day, and just like, it's like my me time. So I definitely think if you can just have some time to yourself to just watch a good movie or a good series, and life will be great.
I agree. Keep yourself entertained.
Yes.
All right, let's see. My second mystery question. So, who are 3 career girls that you would have on your dream team?
Oh,
These women, no doubt, they're going to hold it down.
this is hard. I almost want to see who's in here because there are some people in here that I'm like in a group with, and I would definitely say anyone that's in here, that's in the Society of Elite Resume Writers, you're already on my dream team. But I'm going to put on there, let me see. I'm putting on there my 2 APs. I'm going to say 2 APs. Chelsea, who is not your mother's resume. And she's not here, but Brianna Watts. And Melanie Denny. She's not in here as well. But I'll put all three of them on my team. Mel is my mentor.
I love that. I love the fact that you chose women you know too.
Yeah.
People would choose famous women. That was all right. Last question. A book that inspires you.
The Alchemist. I think it kind of like transformed my way of how things happen in the world, because it just makes you think of how the universe kind of conspires to help you achieve your goals. And I think if it's a book I could recommend to any career changer, is to read The Alchemist. Even though it's a fictional book, I think that it's an inspirational book. It's a book that you can look at to help you and to motivate you to achieve your goals.
Are you taking new clients right now, Danielle?
I am, yes. I'm always taking new clients at any time.
All right. And your services, is it just resume writing, or do you offer additional services outside of resume writing?
I offer resume writing, cover letter writing. I do LinkedIn optimization. I also write executive bios. I write regular bios, like 1-pagers or 2-pagers. Anything that has to do with writing, as far as like the career space goes. I'm that person.
Thank you so much for your time, Danielle. I really appreciate
you.
And you gave so much helpful information. Let's stay connected.
Absolutely.
And I will definitely follow up with you after this chat. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Danielle, thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Bye.